Masculine and feminine empathy represent two distinct yet complementary ways of approaching relationships, challenges, and emotional dynamics. And today, when we unpacking the difference between masculine and feminine empathy, hopefully we create a much greater awareness. Masculine empathy instinctively wants to safeguard the loved ones from harm. Whether physical, emotional, or situational, it tackles the danger head on to eliminate, to provide protective measures against it, to minimize its impact, and also to bolster its capacity to manage with chronic danger. The feminine empathy is more, in contrast, is nurturing, it's relational, and it's emotionally tuned. It seeks to nurture and preserve, focusing on creating a safe and harmonious environment for others to grow and thrive. Feminine empathy prioritizes emotional well-being, connection, belonging, and validation, often emphasizing the softer and nurturing aspects of care. Welcome to Mindset Talk with me, your host, Jabu Zwane. Thank you so much for tuning into Mindset Talk today. Once again, Mindset Talk is about teaching you what are mindsets, how do mindsets form, what is the function of mindsets in our lives, and how can you best create the types of mindsets that you need to build the life that you want. In this show, we're going to be learning about how to change your life one thought at a time. Yes, we are a show that is about healing, restoration, transformation, growth, and also thriving. And I hope you have been thriving so far. And if you've not been thriving, this is the place to be. Great gratitude again, and shout out to Arise Studios with Eob and the team. Thank you so much for making this happen. May the Lord bless you and increase where you've taken, and increase even more for where you're going to be taking from in the future. Just a reminder once again, if you have been happy with the episodes that we've been running so far, please do remember to subscribe. Please remember to hit that notification bell, and also share with your friends and your family about Mindset Talk. If you're finding great value, I really do appreciate your help, your support. We wouldn't be where we are without you. I'm very excited about today's episode. We're going to be talking about something quite controversial, maybe not so controversial. Hopefully we'll bring some clarity to it. And it really is about the difference between the masculine and the feminine empathy. The difference between the masculine and the feminine empathy. We know that the issue of the masculinity and femininity is a massive discussion out here in the world. But what does in empathy, what does that look like? Is there any difference? And maybe you may find some answers that you've been looking for today. When I was writing this book, one of the things that was going on in my mind was that I was looking at how different sometimes I am as a man, especially in terms of the way that I approach things, to other men. And I kept on wondering to myself sometimes, why is it I can think so completely differently from the way that that other men who look like me think? And that's when I got to understand that, you know what, in us as human beings, we both have femininity and we also have masculinity. It's got nothing to do necessarily with your physical appearance, but it has a lot to do with maybe the way you think, even the way that you feel, and some of the things that you prioritize. Some of it also has to do with how you were raised as a kid, how you were brought up as a kid. It has to do with your own personal experiences, even some of the trauma that you may have gone through as a child. And all of those things can shape the way that you think. As we keep on talking about it in Mindset Talk, is that mindsets are those structured categories of thinking that lead to an outcome, whether you are aware of it or not. I've said it before, whether you're aware of it or not, at a conscious level, you're only processing a very minimal amount of information. What the science suggests is that per second at a conscious level, in terms of what you're hearing, what you're seeing, what you can touch, what you can smell, and what you can be able to interact with, only up to 2,000 bits of data, which is about 20 megabytes of data that you're processing. In other words, whatever you can hear, whatever you can sense, it's only about 20 megabytes per second. However, at an unconscious level, meaning that what you're not aware of, what you're extracting from the environment, that can go up to anything between 10 million to 40 million bits of information. So if you were to take 2,000, you're going to divide that up to over 10 million, that is less than 0.0000001% of data that you are actually aware of that you're processing. And what that tells you is that many of us, all of us, as human beings. We are becoming without us being aware of what and who we are becoming. And that is one of the reasons why we have to go through these types of teachings, these types of considerations, these types of reflections, so that we can be more self-aware, because a self-aware person is an empowered person. A self-aware person is a person that takes charge and control of their life far better. They don't become a victim of their own experiences, a victim of their history, a victim of their background, a victim of their lacks of resources, a victim of the environment. The moment that you are not aware, then things start to happen to you. You find yourself saying things that you don't want to say. You find yourself taking decisions that you didn't want to take. You find yourself actually even feeling things that you don't want to feel. Why? Because you're not aware. And so in thinking about mindsets, then it's important to break out the categories of thinking that build the different elements of who we are. And in so doing, we are able to have to manage ourselves better. I often say the person who understands themselves better can manage themselves better, can lead themselves better, and can be able to take, as a result, high quality decisions and have a better life than most. Why? Because this person is aware. The awareness of who you are from the inside, the awareness of the environment, the awareness of other people. This is where the issue of emotional intelligence comes in. If you want to think about what emotional intelligence is that it is that ability to regulate yourself based on how you understand your internal processes, especially how you understand your emotions, what triggers your emotions, what gets your emotions fired up. Why do you get excited about certain things? Why do you get sad about certain things? And how do you best manage that? And the second aspect of that is what we call social intelligence, and that is about understanding how other people are affected by emotions, how your behavior affects other people as well. And the more aware you are of some aspects of your emotions and the way that you think, and how those aspects impact other people, the better then emotionally intelligent you are, the better socially aware that you are. And today, when we unpacking the difference between masculine and feminine empathy, hopefully we create a much greater awareness that in the end, you'll become an empowered person and with mindsets that can help you to achieve what you want. So I'm going to go straight into the book and go straight into the chapter where we're looking at the difference between masculine and feminine empathy. Actually, this is a bonus chapter. It's a bonus chapter. The book actually has got about 15 chapters, but I decided to add a couple of bonus chapters in reflection after I finished, or I thought I finished the book. And this one on the difference between masculine and feminine empathy actually is the first chapter of the bonus chapter. So let's go to it. And as I always do in the book, I start off with a little bit of a story. And the story, for the most part, is actually based on true events, on something that has happened, either what I've counseled or what I've observed or what somebody has told me. And then I try and do analysis basically based on real life examples. So let me go to it and let me start off with that. All right. Empathy, that ability then to connect with others, is a universal human trait. I believe that most human beings are empaths. In other words, most human beings, we are able to feel for each other. We are able to consider and think about each other. The only thing is that many times we shut that down because of what we're afraid of being taken advantage of. We're afraid of being hurt. We're afraid of being seen as weak. We're afraid basically of vulnerability. This is what we're afraid of. And we're afraid of how people are going to perceive us once we start showing our weaknesses, because we know that by and large, most people have a negative perception about weaknesses. And that's why we are afraid, therefore, to become vulnerable. However, empathy is an expression that can differ widely depending on individual tendencies, shaped by cultural, psychological, and also biological factors. Masculine and feminine empathy represent two distinct yet complementary ways of approaching relationships, challenges, and emotional dynamics. And these archetypes are not confined to gender, but rather to describe energetic tendencies that can be present in any individual. In this chapter, we're going to delve deeply into the nuanced differences between masculine and feminine empathy, exploring how they tackle the danger and nurture and safety, and examines their interplay in the relationships and also in leadership. By understanding these distinctions, we can then foster a deeper appreciation for empathy in all its forms and learn to balance the energies for healthier and more effective connections. So I want to start off with the first story, and this story is about Aaron and Clara. Aaron and Clara. And this is our story. I'm not going to read the entire story as I normally do. I'll just take bits and pieces and come to the conclusion and then go deeply into what that basically means. The late afternoon sunlight bathed the small living room in a golden glow. Okay, so there's a light that's coming through the door and is creating that goldness, that gold. But Aaron barely noticed as he stared at the bills spread out before him. His head throbbed. But it wasn't just the numbers that overwhelmed him, it was the weight of what they represented. 2 days earlier, he and his wife, Clara, had sat in the sterile office of a neurologist as the doctor explained her diagnosis, a degenerative disease that would, over time, steal her mobility. The possibility of paralysis loomed, heavy and unspoken, between them. Aaron felt an instinctive surge to do something about it, to fix what was broken. But all the doctor could offer were the treatments to manage the symptoms. And now, as he calculated what it would take to cover the mounting medical bills, Aaron knew what had to be done. His current job wasn't enough. He needed he needed to take on extra shifts at the factory and maybe pick up a side gig. He didn't think twice about the decision. He'd do whatever it took to protect Clara and to provide for what she needed. That evening, he found her in the kitchen, seated at the table with her hands wrapped around a steaming mug of tea. Her hazel eyes, always so full of life, now seemed distant, clouded by the worry. I talked to my superior, Aaron said, but pulling out a chair to sit across from her. I can start working extra hours next week, and I'm looking into hiring a home nurse to help you to get things done when things get tougher. Clara's lips curved into a faint smile, but her eyes didn't meet his. That's good, she softly said. So, towards the end of the story, or rather the part that I talk about here, there is a bit of an issue here. Clara is feeling a little bit neglected. And then she starts to complain to Aaron. And she says to him, Aaron, I know that you're trying to help, and I love you for it, but I feel alone. You're never here. And when you are here, you are so tired, and it's like you are not really with me. He opened his mouth to respond, but she held up a hand to stop him. I don't need just the bills to be paid, she continued with her voice cracking. I need you. I need to feel like I'm not facing this alone. And right now, I do. See, the thing with masculine empathy is that it is very much focused on productivity, actions that need to be done to take care of people, on problem solving, on tackling danger. Before I give you the next illustration that I want to give you, I want to now read the next story. Remember now the story of Aaron and Clara. That Clara got this degenerative disease and she needed him to be there. But at the very same time, in Aaron's mind, he knew that medical aid or whatever money that they were generating is not going to be enough to take care of the bills. And so he decided to take an extra job, even to take on extra gigs. But at the very same time, this is a very vulnerable time for Clara. She needs the mad husband to be there. But at the very same time, there's a dilemma. If he's at home, he's not making money. And if he's not making money, they won't be able to pay for the bills for her to go to the hospital. So how then do they tackle this? How do they tackle this? Before we go into how they tackle it, let's go into another story. And here the story is about a mother's love, the story of Thandi and her twins. Here it starts. The warm afternoon sun streamed through the kitchen window, illuminating the wooden floors where a 4-year-old Thando stood on a chair, carefully balancing it as he reached out for the box of cereal on the top of the shelf. His small arms strained as he stretched, determination etched into his tiny face. Zandi stepped into the kitchen and froze at the sight of what she was seeing. Thando, she almost screamed, her voice her voice shaking in her throat. She quickly crossed the room, steadying the chair before he could fall. What are you doing? You could have hurt yourself. Thando looked at her, wide-eyed but calm. I was getting cereal, Mommy, he said matter-of-factly. Why didn't you ask Mommy to help? She demanded, her voice trembling with a mix of fear and frustration. Thando paused, tilting his head slightly as if pondering the question. And he said, because Mommy is always busy with Thandi, he said softly. The words hit Zandi like a thunderbolt. She stood there stunned as Thando climbed down from the chair and padded over to the kitchen table. He sat down with his small hands resting on the edge of the table, waiting patiently for her to bring him a bowl of cereal. What was happening here was that Thandi, who is Thando's twin sister, had a bit of a condition. And because he had a bit of a condition, Zandi was attending a lot towards Thandi, but not so much towards Thando. And so what happened is that Thando started figuring out, because Thandi needs Mommy more than he supposedly does, or because of maybe Mommy always says she's looking after Thandi every time he comes, he started trying to figure things out for himself in the home. But obviously, this was creating a bit of a problem also in the marriage with her husband Tsepo, because Tsepo has been saying to her, "Listen, you need to also give some attention to Thando, not just to Thandi, because as much as it is true that our daughter has a condition and she needs a bit of help, it is also true that our other son also does need quite a bit of help." So this is now what Tsepo said to Thandi after she told him about what happened. Tsepo reached out for a hand and said, "Zandi, I've tried to tell you, Thandi needs you. Or needs you, yes, but so does Thando. And so does Thandi in a different way. She needs to learn independence, at least the kind that is within her ability. You're so busy protecting her from failure that you are not giving her a chance to grow at all." So Zandi wiped her tears, and she said, "I just wanted to make sure that she never feels less. I don't want her to struggle." "I know," Tsepo said, "but sometimes letting her try, even if she struggles, is the greatest gift you can give her. You don't have to do it alone. We are in this together, Zandi." And so you got two stories. You have a man that is deciding, I'm going to work extremely hard. This is Aaron. I'm going to make sure that my wife, Clara, doesn't struggle at all. But it creates a problem where she needs a little bit of nurturing, a little bit of his presence, a little bit of more of his hugs. And he's thinking, I know I love you and I want to be there and I'll kiss you in the head, but I need to go out there. I need to go get money. I need to make sure that the bills are taken care of so it can be well. And then here we are, we've got a mother, we've got a couple that has got young children. One child is not doing very well. The husband is like, yes, it is true. I love both of my kids. They all have to be attended to. Yes, it is true. Thandi's got some issues, but so Thando also does need some attention. So very practical in terms of the way that he's approaching. And then on the other hand, you see Tandi's thinking, but yes, Tando is okay. I need to attend to Tandi because Tandi needs quite more of my attention. When we look at those two situations, nobody is actually necessarily doing anything wrong. Everybody's pretty much operating in their strengths. But now, how do you balance the two together? I want to also quickly give you another story that I want to share with you, and I want you to imagine the story with me together. Let's try and do some imagination. Imagine for a second. Here is a couple, all right, and then they've got young children. And then it's an evening. It's around, let's say, 11:30 in the evening, all right? And then there's a hard knock on the door, or maybe they say that there is some noise outside. There's some movement outside. And then they can hear some kind of whispering. And then they kind of realize, oh my goodness, there's some danger going on. Maybe we're going to get robbed here. In that scenario, if you've got a husband and a wife, if you've got a man and a woman, and you've got children, what normally happens? What would normally happen in that scenario? All right. The typical scenario would be the mother is going to take the kids, go into the room somewhere, probably hide, and the husband is going to think of a way that what does he need to do to tackle the danger. So if he feels that maybe he's got the ability to tackle the danger, he'll find maybe a weapon, he'll find maybe a panga, find a gun, whatever the case might be, to make sure that he goes out and he goes and tackles the danger. So typically, both parents, the feminine wants to create safety to make sure that everybody's safe, and by being present, by comforting, by consoling. On the other hand, the masculine would also think about the same safety that is required, but would think until the danger is taken care of, we're not safe, and therefore think about practical ways that the danger has to be tackled. And this is oftentimes what I see even when I do counseling sessions, the issue, the problem. The problem is that the insistence that one way is the best way without entirely considering a different way, and also not even trying to find some kind of a balance between the two. And then because of that, then it creates major problems in relationships. And I think that because of that as well, there is often a misunderstanding of what masculine empathy is. And I'm not just talking for myself as a man, but I'm talking about it in general. And I think that sometimes empathy is even, when it presents like that, when empathy presents like in a more feminine way, even in men, there's often a misunderstanding of the masculinity or the manhood of a man. So what are the key traits? Let's starting now with the masculine empathy. Masculine empathy is characterized by action, decisiveness, and a focus on practical outcomes. It is driven by the instinct to protect and solve problems, ensuring safety and well-being of others through tangible measures. And this form of empathy is often solution-oriented and task-driven, prioritizing results over emotional processing. All right. And then another thing, let's look at some of the key traits. Some of the key traits are protection focused. Masculine empathy instinctively wants to safeguard the loved ones from harm, whether physical, emotional, or situational. It tackles the danger head on to eliminate, to provide protective measures against it, to minimize its impact, and also to bolster its capacity to manage with chronic danger, or rather to bolster capacity to manage with chronic danger. It's not to say that feminine empathy is not practical, but the focus is different. The focus for the masculine and for the feminine is different. The feminine tends to be more along the lines, let's quickly look at it, the differences between the two. The feminine empathy is more, in contrast, is nurturing, it's relational, and it's emotionally tuned. It seeks to nurture and preserve, focusing on creating a safe and harmonious environment for others to grow and thrive. Feminine empathy prioritizes emotional well-being, connection, belonging, and validation, often emphasizing the softer and nurturing aspects of care. Safety-oriented, Feminine empathy focuses on avoiding danger and maintaining a secure environment. The masculine empathy would focus on tackling danger and eliminating it. The feminine focuses on protecting against it and maintaining a secure environment. Emotional intuition. Feminine empathy is emotionally intuitive. It deeply understands and validates the feelings of others, often sensing unspoken emotions. It's relational and collaborative, it's gentle and patient, and we'll talk about the differences just now. And again, what you'll notice is this. Perhaps even as a woman, you are more masculine in your approach. How do you know? Women that have masculine empathy and that operate more in the masculine empathy also tend to operate in the cognitive empathy. We have not spoken about cognitive empathy yet in the podcast. Maybe I'll quickly go through it just at least to give a little bit of a context in that. I'll quickly do a quick read on it. As one of the types of empaths that I write about in the book, and the cognitive empath is somebody that is a bit more reflective, that thinks of empathy more from a practical level and how to tackle it mainly from their head more than from their heart. So I'm not going to read the story about the cognitive empath. I'm going to quickly go into a quick description and some quick traits. Cognitive empaths are uniquely gifted at understanding emotions through logical lens. They approach emotions with curiosity and analysis, aiming to understand the reasons behind why someone feels the way that they do, instead of simply absorbing the feelings. Cognitive empaths dissect the emotional makeup of a person to uncover the root causes of those emotions. They combine intellectual insight with genuine concern, offering thoughtful advice and practical solutions to help others to navigate those struggles. What are some of the traits? Analytical, thoughtful, emotionally reflective, intellectual communicators, and they've got a scientific approach in terms of dealing with these sensitive issues. They rely on evidence-based reasoning to understand emotions and relationships. They apply principles of psychology, sociology, and other fields to dissect emotional patterns and offer solutions that are grounded in logic and supported by research. So a typical emotional empath will hear about a problem. Yes, they'll feel for you. So a cognitive empath, they will hear about a problem. Yes, they will feel for you, but they'll start to think about what actually has contributed to you feeling that way. A typical psychologist would be somebody that is a cognitive empath because they look at science, they look at behavioral science and understand emotions literally from why people behave the way that they do. And then based on that, they'll act on what needs to get done. On the other hand, the emotional empath will feel sad. They'll sit there, they'll cry with you, and then they will carry on your emotions. They may not necessarily even have a solution for you, but you may feel supported, you may feel heard. The only problem is that with the emotional empath is that they don't always process your emotions in a way that is healthy when they're talking to you. Whereas, on the other hand, a cognitive empath will think about what we've gone through and start to think about what are some of the solutions. And that's why there's a strong similarity or a strong relationship between a cognitive empath and a masculine empathy. And so it so happens that you can be a woman and then you can be a cognitive empath, which means that you understand deeply intellectually how emotions function. You can regulate yourself. You can reason yourself. You don't just go into the emotional, overreaction. And also as a result, when it comes to problems, you're not the one to sit and cry about problems. You put on your boots, you put on your pants, you put on your dress, you put on whatever that you need to put on, and you decide, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to do something about it. And so it is therefore not necessarily true that masculine empathy only belongs to men. There are women who are highly empathic, but they approach and understand things and understand people's feelings from the masculine or in a masculine way. So let's look at it a bit further, and then hopefully then just break it down even more. In other words, as I've said before, if you're thinking about masculine empathy, so here are some of this. Here are some of the challenges. The challenges with masculine empathy is that it's the perception of emotional detachment. Similarly, like let's look at this situation. Aaron, his wife, experienced him as if he was emotionally detached. In his mind, the safety of his wife from the disease, getting medication to treat the disease, was a way of expressing the love, was a way of ensuring that she was safe, although unfortunately he wasn't as much around as he needed to be, or at least that she would have preferred. So masculine empathy can appear cold and distant because it prioritizes action over emotional engagement. And then the other part is difficulty recognizing or difficulty identifying emotional needs. Masculine empathy may overlook the softer emotional aspects of a situation, focusing instead on practical solutions. And then the other part is resistance then to vulnerability. Masculine empathy or people or the masculine does not like to be vulnerable purely because part of masculinity is the ability to tackle danger, to be productive, to eliminate challenges. Therefore, vulnerability is not a word, it's not a state of being that masculinity processes very well. There's a reason why so many men don't like to be vulnerable. I used to think that it is a negative thing, and I suppose there's some negative elements to it. But sometimes to be able to really get to the bottom of things, we have to think about why does it make sense that so many men don't want to be vulnerable. The word itself suggests that something dangerous will be happening to you while you don't have any ability to protect yourself. Because vulnerability basically means that I'm open to revealing things about myself that may make me seem as if I'm weak, make me feel that I can be easily attacked, I can be hurt, and I don't necessarily have any control on how you would do that and how that is going to impact me. You can see how that is a problem, especially with a masculine that wants to tackle the danger. And one of the words that I normally use when I talk to men and when I talk to people that tend to be more masculine, I speak about rather radical transparency, or I speak about transparency. And transparency is that we talk about things exactly as they are. If I don't have enough money, I say that I don't have enough money to be able to pay my bills at the end of the month, and I need some assistance, or I need to do more to generate more income. I don't talk about how that is making me feel. That is making me feel like I'm less of a man. It's making me feel like I failed my family. It's making me feel like I'm a failure. Like a masculinity doesn't want to sit in that processing of feelings. One of the ways that masculinity, in a way, helps men is that you start to think about solutions rather than sitting down and talking about them. Where does vulnerability help? Vulnerability helps as far as processing those emotions. But the reality of the matter also is this: I believe that vulnerability also needs timing. That if you're not ready to be vulnerable, vulnerability can become something that is very, very destructive, or that will not, maybe not destructive, that won't help you so much. If you're not ready to handle and to deal with the pain, and then you're deciding right then to deal with that, and you find that then you're not able to break free because maybe you're too emotional. Maybe it's too soon after this incident has happened. Maybe you have not done enough time to think about it, or taken enough time to think about it, and then you try to do it, and then things just completely fall apart. At least that's my opinion. It's not necessarily a psychological or any scientific based opinion. It is purely my opinion that, based on my observation, transparency for a masculine type of person, especially men, works best when it comes to talking about problems. We don't make judgments about what those problems are. We don't go on too long about why I'm feeling this way. How does my mother leaving me when I was still young making me feel? How did my father beating me up as a kid make me feel? Unless that is going to help to give a solution. And most men and most masculine people are not interested in tackling it that way. On the other hand, for the reason why femininity or feminine empathy is more favorable for, or has got a more, or is best served by vulnerability, is because you need to create that safe environment, that psychological safety, where you're talking about how are things making you feel, right? Why? Because feminine empathy tends to avoid conflict, seeks to provide emotional shelter, and also seeks to have stronger connections. What are some of the challenges? Perception of passivity. Feminine empathy can be misunderstood as avoiding or ignoring problems rather than confronting them. Secondly, emotional overload. Its deep connection to others emotions can lead to overwhelm and compassion fatigue. Difficulty setting boundaries. Feminine empathy may prioritize peace, unity, and others' needs than at the expense of its own well-being. And then lastly, number 4, it's over-reliance on relational safety. A strong emphasis on connection can sometimes delay necessary action in challenging situations. In high-stakes situations where tough decisions need to be made urgently, feminine energy can overwhelm and become avoidant in the hope that the urgency will subside. And again, understand me very well. This is not about men and women. Yes, feminine traits present more in men, yes, in women, and masculine traits present more in men. It is true, but both men and women have got both feminine and masculine traits. And as a result, they can also have feminine and masculine empathy. And balancing the two and finding the balance between the two is what we're actually looking for. And in the book here, there is an entire, something like 15 differences between the two and how to be able to identify them. But I don't want to spend too much time on that because I've already done that. But I want to rather get into then how do we balance the two? How do we interplay? How do we interplay the masculine and feminine empathy? And how do we try and find a balance so we can become highly functional in this situation? Okay. In relationship, masculine empathy provides security and solutions, while feminine empathy nurtures emotional intimacy. It's very difficult to feel intimate, especially in a romantic relationship, when every day you're only talking about work, problems, solutions, troubles, challenges. There are moments where we got to forget about talking about these things, and then we can sit as husband and wife, look each other in the eye, and talk about, hey, you are amazing. I love your eyes. You're beautiful. I love this. I love that. How are you feeling? How was your day? How are some of the things that are important to you? How are you still managing with whatever issue that you are dealing with? That creates emotional safety. That creates intimacy. And when intimacy happens, trust is cultivated. Talking about problems, yes, it creates dependency and reliability. But if we're talking about trust, trust is an outcome of intimacy, or rather, intimacy is also an outcome of trust. It's one of those questions of, the egg or the chicken. Which one came first? Does trust come first before intimacy, and intimacy first before trust? But I suppose when I get to know you as a person, when I get to know your character and I get to understand your integrity, your principles, your values, and the way that you're dealing with me, then I can start to trust you. And as a result, I can become vulnerable enough then to become intimate. So in leadership, masculine empathy drives action and accountability, while feminine empathy fosters collaboration and psychological safety. Misunderstandings arise when one form of empathy is expected to be another, or expected to be another is expressed. For example, a partner offering masculine empathy may focus on solving a problem, which can feel dismissive to someone seeking emotional support, as it was the case in the case of Aaron and Clara, right? A partner offering feminine empathy may prioritize connection, which can feel inadequate to somebody expecting immediate action. Isn't that one of the discussions that men feel like women sit around and talk too much about stuff and men talk less and more action? But we're realizing the more society becomes equal with the rise of equality throughout the world, regardless of what we may think about it, these days, men and women have got closer to equal opportunities to have careers, to generate an income, to be in positions of leadership and influence. And the more and more that we are seeing this, the more and more that we're seeing that it's not necessarily true that masculinity is only for men and femininity is also only for women, because a lot of women are rising because of their problem-solving skills, the ability to be practical and all of that. And it is not as exclusively masculine or exclusively men trait. So balancing the two, empathy is most effective when masculine and feminine energies are balanced with individuals and relationships. Here are some of the ways to cultivate that balance. Number one, it's important to acknowledge your strengths. It's important that you operate in your strength. If you tend to be a lot more on the feminine side in terms of how you approach things, then go with that. I know that, for example, I operate a lot in my feminine way of thinking. I am a very collaborative person. I'm a teacher. I like to nurture. I love to consult. I love to include and consider other people. I'm a very inclusive person. I tend to have a very democratic way of approaching things. I don't like just speaking things brashly without thinking about how certain things affect people. And I've seen how being that way oftentimes can delay my ability to get certain things done, because I'm trying to bring everybody on board when I'm trying to do certain things. Or I think too much about how my decisions are going to affect other people, and I end up not being able to make some urgent decisions. So even as a man, I'm aware of that is the way that I am. And as a result, I've had to work a lot in terms of developing more of my masculine way of doing things, which is, tends to be more about, problem solving, critical thinking, seeing certain things black and white and getting things done more urgently. And why does this matter? Knowing your strengths allows you to operate authentically while identifying your areas of growth. For instance, if you're naturally solution-oriented, that means masculine empathy, you can appreciate your ability to take decisive action while remaining mindful of the need to have an emotional connection with others. You don't have to be disconnected and detached. Actionable insight, keep a journal to reflect on how you can respond to different situations. Take feedback from your loved ones about how your behavior impacts them and how they're experiencing you. So here's a question. Do you naturally prioritize solutions, or do you focus on emotional comfort? Identifying these patterns helps you to build awareness and positions to disrupt your patterning. Another thing is that develop complementary skills. Like I've said, in my awareness of who I am, I realize that I need to develop some complementary skills. I'm not very strong on even, let's say, for example, admin. When something requires that much specific focus, that is not me. And as a result, when I work, I prefer to work who are admins, people who are admin strong, because I know that is not my strength. And it leads to frustration if I'm having to be forced to do that. Why does it matter to develop complementary skills? Masculine empathy benefits from emotional attunement, while feminine energy is enriched by decisive action. So when you know that you take too long to make decisions, let's say that you are a couple and you are married, and you know one of you takes way too long to take decisions, and the other one tends to be too quick to make certain decisions. In matters that are urgent, you want the person that is very good at making decisions to make those decisions. In matters that are very complex, that requires a little bit of more of your mind to be applied before you take the decision, you want then the one that is more feminine, that tends to consider a lot more than just the decision, to be the one that is leading the conversation. Feminine energy is consultative, and as a result, tends to be a moderator, tends to be more facilitative, tends to want to get a bit more information before some decisions are made, but at the very same time, can wait too long to make the decision. What's an actionable insight? Practice muscle building in your weaker areas. In other words, practice taking quicker decisions if you know you take too long. Practice slowing down some decisions if you know you take rash decisions, not well thought out, and then in the end, turns out to be wrong decisions because you didn't think about all the factors. So in other words, whatever you've got a lack of, try and gather more of. Whatever you got more of, try to manage it so that your strength does not become a weakness for you. The third thing is that communicate your needs clearly. Communicate your needs clearly. Why it matters: misunderstandings often arise when expectations go unspoken. For example, someone offering masculine empathy may focus on fixing the problem, while the other person simply wants to be heard. It makes me think of a conversation that I've had with my wife as a pastor, as a coach, as somebody, as a mentor, and constantly being in situations where I'm offering solutions, counseling people on solutions, pastoring people on solutions, coaching people on solutions, leading people on solutions. And so I can find myself often in this mindset of, maybe you can also do the same thing as a leader, where you are constantly giving solutions. And when some people, like your wife, for example, just wants to share with you her day, her frustrations about the day, she's not necessarily looking for you to provide a solution. She's looking for you to provide an ear. She's looking for you to comfort. She's looking for you to look her in the eye and say to her, it's okay, you're here. You can lie on my chest and let's talk about it. Take some deep breaths. Breathe in a little bit of my sweat from my armpit. Breathe in a little bit of my cologne from my shirt. Let's have a synchronized heartbeat for a moment so you can feel secure. But you, Mr. Fix-It, no, you should have told them this at work. Cannot let them do that to you. I've told you, you must say this to your boss, and have you ever tried this? And you go into solution and fixing mode, totally creating even more tense and unsafe environment for your partner instead of creating a more safer. I hope that makes sense. Okay. The other thing is that it's important, again, to appreciate the differences. That masculine empathy and masculine and feminine empathy don't have to be in competition. It's not necessarily the opposite. And we sometimes think of it that way, especially in romantic relationships. We're thinking that men and women are opposite. We are not opposites. We are part and parcel of the same. We are different. And we got to learn to appreciate each other's differences. It's not either or. It can be both. Sometimes it is one, sometimes it is another. It's about learning about timing, being sensitive to different environments, being sensitive to different life stages, sensitive to different events, and getting the right context so that within different context, the right type of empathy can come to the fore, or at least be able to balance the two so that you can be able to tackle different situations more comprehensively, instead of just being one-sided. So why it matters to appreciate the differences: often masculine empathy is seen as too pragmatic, while feminine empathy is dismissed as overly emotional. Not necessarily true. Recognizing their unique contributions encourages a more inclusive and collaborative dynamic. Actionable insight: reflect on situations where the other type of empathy was effective. Celebrate the diversity of approaches rather than criticizing what it feels when certain things are unfamiliar or certain ways of doing things are unfamiliar. There's so much more that I get to talk about here, but I've got to come to the end, and I've got to close it up. And I'm going to close it up quickly with just the last one about emotional intelligence as one of the approaches. And with emotional intelligence, it is about understanding and managing emotions while identifying and responding to others. EQ is the cornerstone of balanced empathy. Why it matters? It enables you to navigate the complexities of human interaction, balancing logic with emotion. Emotional intelligence also prevents over identification with others, with other people's feelings, which can lead to overwhelm, right? When you're over identifying, when you are me tooing other people's emotions. And this is one of the things sometimes with empaths is that because you've gone through certain of the problems, you don't want others to go through the same problems that you have gone through. And then therefore you feel too deeply for them and you want to take away the problems. You become Mr. Fix-It or Miss Fix-It or Mrs. Fix-It. And unfortunately, by so doing, then you take on too much on yourself. And it can make it very difficult then for you to offer objective solutions. What is the actionable insight here? Be mindful of your emotional, mental, and physical and spiritual capacity. For example, when you feel strongly about having to act to protect or spend long hours fixing a problem without taking a break, remind yourself that you are doing your best. You're doing the best you can. In other words, give yourself some grace. Give yourself some time to think. Give yourself some time to appreciate the fact that you are just a human being with limitations, and you don't need to have all the answers. So balancing this masculine and feminine empathy is not about men and women, but it is about understanding that both men and women have them. And it is also very possible that one man can be more feminine in their empathy, and then a woman can also be more masculine in their empathy. And I think sometimes what happens is this, especially with masculine, feminine women, or masculine, or women that have masculine femininity, they're often misunderstood to be cruel, to be uncaring, to be detached, to be emotionally unavailable, because typically everybody's expecting them to be, what's the word? They're expecting them to be soft. That you gotta be soft, you gotta be in your feminine, and if you are in your feminine, then the man is gonna attend to you. But the thing is that if you are designed to be a problem solver, if you are designed to be a critical thinker, if you're designed and you've got the energy, physically speaking, as a woman, where you are an action type of person, it'll be super frustrating to be in a situation where you gotta be always passive, suppressing your intelligence, suppressing your talents, suppressing your skills, so that some man can feel like they've got a place in your life. This is going to be very frustrating. And so it is important, let's say, for example, if you happen to be that kind of man who's married to a woman that is that masculine, to think about how do you complement how do your strengths complement each other, rather than feeling as though you're in competition. And I would also then say the same thing, that if you're a woman that happens to be quite masculine in your approach, don't become competitive. Be careful of being competitive. Be careful of trying to always be the one that is coming up with solutions, that needs to, to fix things, and becoming impatient when things are not working out your way. And similarly speaking, if it so happens that you are married, let's say, to a man that tends to be more feminine, that you don't start labeling their feminine empathy to say that he's like a woman. If he wants to sit down and have a talk, if he wants to find out how you're doing, if he wants to cater to your needs, and this whole talk about certain men being simps, or this whole talk about calling certain men soft. Some men want to sit down and have a discussion and find out how you are and create emotional safety and be consultative and collaborative and kind and compassionate in that way. It does not make them weak or less. It just makes them a little bit different. And I think that's what I'm trying to get to the point here today, is that let's be more empathic, less judgmental, more curious, more open, navigate each other's lives journey as we walk in together with understanding, with openness. And life becomes more of an adventure. We're discovering things about each other together. So instead of being highly judgmental, ask questions about things that you don't understand. Be open to learn something new that you possibly did not know before. And I think in this way, the journey that is being approached from curiosity, from inquiry, from openness to learn, enables us to grow together, and ultimately then it'll enable us to thrive together. So much more that can be said. I want to say thank you so much for tuning into Mindset Talk today. Once again, my name is Jabu Zwane. On Mindset Talk, we talk about what are mindsets, how do they form, what is the function of mindsets in our lives, and how can you best create the types of mindsets that will help you to build the life that you want. Hopefully today you were able to heal, to transform, to get restored, to grow, and to thrive. Shout out once again to Arise Studio, EOB team. Thank you so much for providing the platform. Don't forget to continue to click and subscribe. Click on that notification bell. Share with your friends about this podcast. And we'll see you next time on Mindset Talk. Peace.